In this video, I'm going to be discussing the matchup between the Seattle Surge and the Toronto Ultra for today, Sunday, December 11th. This is going to be the second matchup for the Call of Duty League Major 1 qualifiers that we're having today. I'm going to be going over the DraftKings prices and the price picks lines and props on where they're sitting at the moment when I'm recording this video. Toronto Ultra and Seattle Surge is going to be a banger of a matchup. Both of these teams are coming off of wins from their respective matchups. Seattle Surge just actually beat the London Royal Ravens in a crazy match that we saw yesterday. This was actually a pretty solid performance from the Seattle Surge. As you guys can see, the line is sitting at an even for Seattle Surge at the time of me recording this, and at a minus 135 for Toronto Ultra. So I believe Toronto Ultra is favored to win this, but Seattle Surge is still a really good contender. If you guys can see here for the first matchup, we had 250 to 68 blowout to London Royal Ravens, and then 6-4 in the search and destroy. They lost that. They won the control, and they won the hard point. So basically, if we get another hard point, Brainberg Hotel, or control Brainberg Hotel, Seattle Surge is really good in Brainberg Hotel. So that's the map you want to see on the Seattle side. Obviously, Ultra's probably going to veto that. I'm not sure what's Toronto Ultra's best map in terms of hardpoint, but Mercado Los Alamos for Seattle Surge is good as well. The last matchup that they had, as you can see, Sib 26 and 23, he did a good. Pred as well, 23 and 20. They really like that match. So going over to the DraftKings prices for today, we have Scrappy at the most expensive slot in the flex position at 9,600. Scrappy is obviously a beast. He's put a couple of good fantasy point games. Obviously, when he was at 6,800, that was a huge miss price. Although he kind of didn't meet value here against the New York Subliners, he did so kind of against Atlanta FaZe. He was already appropriately priced at 9,200. At 9,600, I think he's still a viable option because he's shown, if you look here on the kill column, you can see his kills stand at 95, 60, 83. So this guy gets a lot of engagements. So for DraftKings, maybe 9,600 is a little bit too expensive, but it really depends on how many deaths he gets. Now on a matchup like or a platform like Prize Picks, you'd take his over every day of the week because we're seeing here that his totals are over 50 each time. So I would say look at Scrappy's overs, and I would be really happy to see him go off against Seattle. Obviously, I want to see both teams duke it out. I think Scrappy is a good play in DraftKings as well as Prize Picks. Sib at 9,200. Sib, hasn't quite been producing as much as we'd like on the DraftKings side since his first matchup where he dropped a nuke 176 fantasy points. Basically, his last matchup was 95 fantasy points. He dropped 70 kills, but he's just getting a lot of deaths. He's getting a lot of engagements, but he needs to push those deaths down a little bit more. He's play a little bit more careful so that that 9,000 price tag can actually pay off in DraftKings. We have Insight for Toronto at 8,400. I think this is too much for Insight. I think at 8,400 you could find a lot of value elsewhere in the slate. I would say completely for Insight. I never really see him in winning lineups anyways. And Pred at 8,200 is a great player right here. At 8,200, he's seen a price cut. He's the cheapest he's ever been on DraftKings so far this season, and he's going up against a team where he's probably going to go to a Game 5. So at 8,200, I expect him to hit at least 90 fantasy points today. and then probably 110 on the high end if he can keep his engagements this high. If you can see, he's so far gotten 80 plus kills every single game. Obviously, on some games like the first one where he didn't get as much objective points, or got a lot of deaths, he didn't do as well. But as long as you can get those high kills and keep those deaths on a minimum, and get those assists, he's definitely going to play a part in the winning slates at 8,200. I think he's a good value there. If we look at Mac, 7,600. I haven't been following Mac too closely, but as you can see here, he hasn't really played a big part in anything pretty much, other than the Boston match where I believe they lost. He got 118 fantasy points. That's because he got 85 kills. At 7,600, I feel like he's a little bit too much. But honestly, if he can pick it up, Mac was a good player back in OG Modern Warfare, so he might pick it up. And Seattle's a team where throughout the board they usually all get high kills except accuracy. So Mac, we've seen his ceiling before. He has a high ceiling. Obviously he hasn't been consistent right now in the past 3 matches that they've had so far. We still have to look at more data. As you guys are aware, they changed the meta. So, we still have to see more games out of him. At 6,600, I feel like he's a coin flip to meet value at that price tag. Although we're seeing now that in DraftKings, sometimes you can't even get away with getting these little sneaky plays that get you 90 fantasy points, and you pay basically like nothing for them, because most of these winning lineups, even on the double up 50-50s, people are just winning with the best lineups ever, right? So double ups are getting harder. So these cheaper players need to start hitting those 100 plus fantasy points for them to become any kind of valuable. Or you got to play them in the captain position. Standy at 7,400, I think is insanely good, and I think this might be the value for this matchup. Standy at 7,400, he's gotten 84 kills in his last matchup. I think he is mispriced right here. I think if you have a chance, get Standy's over on Prize Picks and roster him on your DraftKings lineup, because I know that Toronto's not going to get blown out of the water by Seattle. Toronto has a good team. They're not going to get smoked. They might not win, but they're definitely not going to get smoked. So that on the DraftKings side of things, this is going to go the distance. And Standy's probably going to meet his value. He's probably going to get 100 fantasy points if he, gets these engagements as high as he did against the Atlanta team. So hopefully we see that from his part. And then looking next at Kleenex at 6,800. Kleenex was looking atrocious last matchup against Atlanta. Absolutely atrocious. He was going like 7-30 or something like that on his matchup against FaZe, which was looking pretty bad. I think it was game 1? If we see here, he was 7-25 game 1 against FaZe, so he was doing horrible. I would fade him for now. I don't know if that's something that was just a fluke, or that he's really not, feeling comfortable with this game. I would fade him completely, just because of that. Accuracy, 85 fantasy points. Accuracy, I never target. He always has 60 kills or more, more or less. But deaths, he has a lot of deaths as well, so I wouldn't really target him. But at 6,200, man, that's hard to pass up. That is really hard to pass up at 6,200. If Seattle were to do a 3-0, man, accuracy would probably be the most valuable player, because he would most likely get more than 100 fantasy points, and that would be crazy on that part. But team positions, Ultra is a little higher at 3,400, and Seattle Surge is at 2,800. If we go over to Prize Picks, we can see a couple of matchups here. We see a couple of props. Pred and Sib are sitting at 52.5 for the overs, map 1 through 3. Sib is at the 50.5, map 1 through 3. I don't know how I feel about these, just because it's from 1 to 3. we see Pred map 1, Sib map 1. I would say, man, Pred at over 23.5 is a nice play here. Just because his engagements are going to be high, as well as Scrappy map 1, 23.5. We definitely have to see the maps. The maps is an important factor. And then you'd go over to a website like this, like lostfool.gg or breakingpoint.gg, and see what the stats look like for that specific player on that specific map. And that's why I like Lost Fool, because you could actually target it more. You could target the player, and you can see a variety of his statistics on several maps. So that's a really good tool to have there. If you go down here and check out the next props, Standy map 2 6.5, Scrappy map 2 7. I don't touch search and destroys; they're too risky. Pretty much coin flips, honestly. So we see any game threes here. Standy map 3, 22.5, Scrappy 23.5. That's a little high for control. If it goes to game 5, honestly, both of these might hit over, but it's a risky play. As same goes for Pred and Sib. As you guys can see, these are all on this around the same. That's because that's where most players are averaging on controls, like 20 kills, 24, 25 kills. That's where people are averaging out. So it's going to be a pretty sweaty grind if you go for 23.5 over or under is going to be a pretty sweaty, especially on a matchup with these two teams who are that good. But yeah, that's what I think on these matchups. Definitely let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, subscribe, comment, and stay tuned for the next matchups that I'm going to be breaking down here in the channel. Thanks.